If you can't convince somebody to buy from you, then you're not going to be in business for very long, because you need customers if you want to survive, and you need a lot of them if you really want to thrive. Which is why in this episode, I'm going to show you exactly how to convince customers to buy from you and not your competitors. Let's get to it. The first rule of convincing someone to become a customer and to buy from you actually has less to do with convincing at all and more to do with really switching the mindset and really switching the attitude and the energy that you approach the sales conversation from, and trying to switch it around from selling to serving. It's probably no surprise here that people like to buy stuff, but they hate being sold to, and all of those horrible cliches of the used car salesman and the pushy, sleazy tactics that are used and still being used today, well, they don't really work like they used to. And the fact that they ever worked is kind of a knock against sales, because there's just so many better ways to sell a product or sell a service or sell whatever it is that you're trying to offer to the customer. You see, people aren't stupid, and they can tell what you're trying to do. And one of my favorite quotes is by David Ogilvy, who says, "The customer isn't stupid, she's your wife." And what he's meaning is not literally that you're married to the customer, but essentially that when you're approaching a sales conversation or a marketing conversation, or you're creating advertising, you want to be creating it for someone like your mom or your sister or your wife or your partner or whoever it is. Basically, somebody that you know and you care about and you actually like and hopefully love. At least in regards to your mom or your wife or your sister. But that is a good point, because if you are able to out-care your competition, if you are able to approach the sales conversation with a genuine attitude of really trying to serve them rather than just simply sell your stuff, the customer is going to pick up on this, and that is an incredibly powerful energy and one that is very, very attractive. Another way to look at this is a strategy called the strategy of preeminence, which was given to us by Jay Abraham. And he says that your job as a marketer or as a salesperson or as a business owner is to try to always act in your customer's best interest. The legal term for this is a fiduciary, which means that you're legally obliged to act in the best interest of your customer. But obviously, as a business owner or an entrepreneur or a salesperson, you don't have a fiduciary responsibility to your customer. You're not legally required to do what's best for them. However, I would argue that by trying to do what's best for them, it's really going to end up being what's best for you too, because you'll both end up winning. This is why one of the most powerful stances that you can take when you're trying to convince a customer to buy from you is, rather than going out there and just trying to sell them, you want to adopt the role of more of a doctor, where your job is to diagnose and then prescribe the appropriate solution. So take in the information. Talk to the customer, get the feedback, ask the questions, do all of the usual sales tactics, but then don't be afraid to diagnose and prescribe what their unique situation is calling for. This also means not being afraid to say no. It is absolutely okay that you turn away certain prospects, and many times you probably should, especially if there's not an ideal fit for your business or your product or whatever it is that you're selling. Another amazing thing happens when you approach a sales conversation or any marketing with the intention or with the belief or with the understanding that you don't necessarily need this customer in order to survive. So you're able to really take the authoritarian position and really able to go out there and properly prescribe and properly diagnose and serve rather than selling, because it's okay to say no. And if you know that, well, you don't need to make the sale, and you really can do what's best for the customer. So on the note of serving and not selling, it's important to move into the next point, which is all about empathy and understanding. You see, customers don't buy when they understand, rather they buy when they feel understood. And this is why it's incredibly important to really try to serve and not sell, and really try to put yourself in their shoes, understand what they're going through, understand where they are right now and where they're trying to get to, but I'll elaborate more on that in just a second. When it comes to marketing, when it comes to sales, and when it comes to convincing someone to buy from you or influencing or persuading or any of the dark arts of business, well, it really does come down to better understanding the customer than anybody else. Because again, when you can really make them feel understood, they're going to resonate with you better, and you're going to be able to come up with more appropriate solutions and make better arguments. So where do you start? Well, this is where I like to suggest you look into two different areas of your customers. Number one is their miseries, and number two is their miracles. Their miseries are things like their pains and their problems and their frustrations and their nightmares and all the stuff that keeps them laying awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Their miracles, on the other hand, are everything that they're trying to move towards. These are things like their goals and their dreams and their aspirations and their desires, and basically everything that gets them up early and jumping out of bed ready to tackle the day. Your job as a salesperson or as an entrepreneur or a marketer or a business person is to help them move away from their miseries and towards their miracles. But in order to do that, you first need to identify what exactly these are. So a little bit of conversation and questioning, probably a little bit of customer research is going to come in very handy. If you're armed with that data of knowing their miseries and knowing their miracles, and knowing the pain that they're trying to get away from, and all the reasons that they would be more able or more willing to buy, well, you're able to position your message accordingly, and then it really becomes an obvious and clear choice for them to make the purchase. Bonus points if the pain that they're trying to move away from is something that they're experiencing right now, which is all about trying to sell a painkiller and not a vitamin. You see, one of the easiest ways to convince somebody to try to buy now rather than putting it off or going to a competitor is really trying to position your offer, position your marketing, and position your sales message in a way that allows them to experience an immediate payoff. Basically, you want to be selling something to someone that they need right now. That's why we say you want to sell the painkiller. You want to find that immediate pain, some problem, some frustration, some negative aspect of their life that they're trying to get away from right now, rather than a vitamin, which is going to help them maybe prevent some kind of pain or some kind of misfortune or help them prepare for the future. Because let's be honest, we as humans, we can visualize a little bit, but we're a lot better at handling really pressing issues right now and putting off less pressing issues till tomorrow or next week or next year or never. This is why it all comes back to understanding those miseries and those miracles, really diving in deep into the pain and the frustration they're trying to move away from so you can really clarify your offer and make them realize why they need to take action and why they need to take action immediately, today, right now. All right, this next point is incredibly important, yet you'd be amazed at how many people get this wrong, and that is that you need to be relevant, meaning you need to try to sell something that people actually want. I know that sounds unbelievably obvious, and yet you'd be amazed at how many people are trying to sell something that nobody wants. And it's not that your product is bad or your service is bad or your business is bad. It's just that the offer or the marketing or the pitch around the sales message that you're trying to put out there, well, that's bad because it's probably not relevant to the specific and unique customer that's right in front of you right now. Again, this all comes back to those miseries and those miracles and really understanding your customer and who it is that you're speaking to, but you need to make sure that the problem you're trying to solve is one that your customer actually has and one that they want solved right away. Probably the best example I can think of is a sales situation that went horribly wrong for the salesperson when they were trying to sell me a car years ago. Basically, everything was going just fine. We were sitting down having a great conversation, was about to pick up a Volkswagen Jetta, which by all means is a pretty standard, pretty economic and cost-conscious car, and the salesperson said right before I was about to sign, "Tell me, is this your dream car?" Now, I don't want to sound snobby, and I'm not even much of a car guy, but I don't think a Volkswagen Jetta is anybody's dream car. So what we had here was a pretty big mismatch between him misreading the situation and just going off a sales script that was obviously terrible, and what my real needs and real desires and real pains were, which was that I just needed a better car. Because my old car was broken and was even worse than a Volkswagen Jetta. Again, not knocking Jettas. They're a fine automobile, but it's by no means my dream car, nor was it even back then. This is why it's important to really understand that customer and make sure that your offer and the sales language and the marketing materials that you're using are relevant to the specific person or the specific niche or market that you're serving right now. Now, if you have a business that serves all sorts of different markets or niches or customers, that's totally okay. You can serve all of them. Just make sure that your marketing materials and your sales materials and your conversations are niche or market dependent, because there's often very little overlap between different market segments, so they're going to require their own unique strategy. And on the topic of unique strategies, let's move on to the next point, which is all about being different. In today's hyper-competitive, crowded, and saturated marketplace, the only way to stand out is to really try to clearly differentiate yourself against all of the other people in your space. We're living in a sea of sameness, and everybody's taking this bland, vanilla, boring approach to their marketing and to their sales. Everybody's ending up sounding the same, and when everybody sounds and looks the same, customers are forced to make a decision based on the only variable that they can really understand, which is price. And you never want to compete on price, because when you do, it's a lose-lose race to the bottom. Whoever gets there first loses. Actually, whoever gets there second loses too. Just don't compete on price. One of the fastest ways to convince a customer to not buy from you is to come down with a case of Me Too-itis and simply take a look at whatever your competitors are doing and then do the exact same thing, which is sadly how most marketing works. This is why, again, you really want to dial deep into that ideal prospect or ideal customer that you're trying to serve. You want to find out their unique pains and problems and frustrations. You want to find out what area that you enjoy working in. And then you want to find out what area that you can do better than anyone else. And where these three things overlap, well, this is your key point of differentiation. Could be also called your unique selling proposition or anything like that. The important point here is that you want to be different in a way that actually matters to your customers. There's no point in being different in a way that has no real appeal, because then again, you're just going to look the same, or they're not going to care about why you're different and they'll just go with a competitor anyways. All right, the next thing you're going to want to do is watch the video I have linked up right here on Introduction to Marketing, which is exactly what you need to see next in order to convince even more customers to buy from you. So check it out now, and I'll see you in the next episode. I fell in love with marketing years ago when I first got interested in figuring out why people buy and act the way they do, and later how to influence and persuade.